Right there on the right-hand side of your screen, taking a live look over in Minneapolis, Minnesota. That is where that memorial there, a makeshift memorial, is set up for Alex Preddy following his shooting death just days ago. Right now, I do want to get to the latest here coming in out of Minneapolis. Take a look at your screen right here as a man has been arrested after spraying an unknown substance on Democratic Congresswoman Ilhan Omar at a town hall last night in Minneapolis. The audience cheered as the man was pinned down, his arms tied behind his back. Watch as it all played out.
ICE cannot be reformed. It cannot be rehabilitated. We must abolish ICE for good. And DHS Secretary Kristi Noem must resign or face impeachment.
You must resign.
I don't know.
Oh my God! She's separating Minnesotans, trying to make a hole. Get us against each other. Make a hole. Make a hole. Who? Make a hole. Against each other. Make a hole. Who?
All right, that's some video right there where you're watching it all play out. Now, Minneapolis police have identified the man in that video there who has been charged as Anthony Kazmierzak. The 55-year-old, investigators say, was booked into the county jail on a charge of third-degree assault, and that is his booking photo released by authorities. As of now, the substance sprayed on the Congresswoman has not been positively identified, but investigators were there on the scene working to figure all of that out. And of course, President Trump says a, quote, big investigation is underway into this weekend shooting death of protester and ICU nurse Alex Preddy. This, of course, happening by Border Patrol. And as we mentioned, there is that makeshift memorial that's been set up. This marked the second fatal shooting this month of a protester in Minneapolis. The first, of course, Renee Good, back on the 7th, shot and killed by an ICE officer. President Trump addressing the shooting death here during a Q&A in Iowa.
Do you agree with the assessment from some of your own officials that Alex Preddy is a domestic terrorist or an assassin?
Well, I haven't heard that, but certainly he shouldn't have been carrying a gun. But hey, look, bottom line, everybody in this room, we view that as a very unfortunate incident, okay? Right. Everyone, right. Unless you're a stupid person, very, very unfortunate incident. I don't like that he had a gun. I don't like that he had 2 fully loaded magazines. That's a lot of bad stuff. And despite that, I say that's a very unfortunate.
Now, at the same time, the acting director of ICE, Todd Lyons, has been ordered to appear in court in person on Friday. Chief Judge Patrick J. Schlitz, the chief federal judge in Minnesota, says the Trump administration has failed to comply with orders to hold hearings for detained immigrants. He's ordered Lyons to appear before him on Friday to explain why he should not be held in contempt. Gerard Felitti is senior counsel at the Lawfare Project, joining us now live to discuss all of this. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Of course. And first off, I do want to ask you kind of overall, a federal judge there ordering the head of a federal agency to appear in court. How does all of that work? What is the authority to do that in the first place?
It's the court's inherent authority under the Judiciary Act to hold hearings and issue contempt proceedings for cases that it's hearing. So in this case, the director of ICE is a party to this case that was filed in federal court by the state of Minnesota. So the court has power to compel ICE to obey its orders. And here the judge appeared to be unsatisfied with what ICE has been representing as reasons for delays in having bond hearings for some of the people who have been detained. So the chief judge is ordering the director of ICE to appear in court to personally explain why the department's not complying with court orders.
And as we kind of take a look at all of this and it continues to play out here, I wanted to ask you the contempt of court situation. Explain to me how that works.
Well, This is an issue of someone not following judicial orders. And normally you have an opportunity to submit papers to the court explaining why there's a delay, why you couldn't comply sooner, and what steps you're doing to comply with the orders. And here, where the judge is not satisfied with a written explanation and there's still delay in holding those bond hearings, you can start a contempt proceeding and order someone to explain verbally and then issue a contempt order if the court is not satisfied that what it asked to be done is being done. And contempt usually takes the form of a fine, a daily fine every time the agency does not comply, but it could also be a criminal contempt proceeding if the court finds that it's so egregious.
So if you are saying there that criminal charges could potentially be filed there.
It's extremely rare, especially against government officials, but if the case is so egregious and there is such a continued denial of obedience to the court's orders, then you might actually see that. But the message that this is sending to the government is that you cannot simply ignore a judiciary because it's not convenient to do so.
What about appearing in person? Virtually, obviously, always an option, but what does it say that he is being ordered to appear in person? Is that something that's common?
It is fairly common, and it speaks to the seriousness of the issue. It tells you that the judge is not satisfied with how ICE has been handling its answers in this case. And you want someone to appear personally, to take time out of their day to indicate how serious the situation is. This isn't just a written request. This is, you have to appear personally. You have to stand in front of the judge and explain yourself. And this gives the signal that the judiciary here, this court, is taking its powers very seriously in the underlying case, that it does want to have more active oversight over what ICE is doing because the department is not answering to the court.
What sort of implications, whatever happens here in court, whatever the judge does decide, what implications could that have on the immigration enforcement operations there in Minnesota and maybe elsewhere?
This will have broad application in Minnesota and potentially in other states as well. The basic issue is the procedural due process one. It's people who are detained are entitled to have an opportunity to be heard for a bond hearing. They're entitled to counsel, even if they can't, even if the government does not pay for one, because this is a civil, not a criminal proceeding for removal. There are certain process rights that a person who is detained has. And what this judge in Minnesota is saying is that courts are taking a more active role in making sure that these rights are given, that procedure is followed. So what the outcome of this hearing, the outcome of this case, signals across the nation that courts, especially federal courts, are looking to uphold those basic procedural due process rights that every detained person has.
What standards, and you kind of touched on this, but what standards do courts use to determine whether an agency has violated the detainee's due process rights?
At the very basic level, it's whether the person has notice of the charges against them, whether they've been given an opportunity to be heard, so whether there's been a detention hearing, a bail hearing, whether they have the ability to communicate with counsel. These are the basic things that the court looks at if procedural due process is being followed. So this is more or less a binary situation when you look whether something has happened. Has there been a bail hearing? Has this person been denied the opportunity to go before an immigration court judge in however many days it's been since they've been detained? And if the answer is no, then that's a problem. That's a violation of that person's legal rights.
What do we need to be watching for here as that hearing does take place? As of right now, it is scheduled 2 days from now on Friday. What should we be watching for to come from that?
Well, two things. First, whether this hearing even happens. The underlying individual who was detained and who is at issue here, if ICE gives him the hearing or if it releases him from custody, then this hearing may never need to happen. So there is possibility that ICE will go through with the judge's orders and that this hearing does not need to take place. But more broadly, we need to see what the judge actually issues as an order, because at the end of the day, it does look like ICE has not been following the processes laid out by the judge, and it will be interesting to see whether the government fights this, whether the Trump administration wants to appeal whatever it is that the judge said, or whether it will change, whether we've seen Trump saying that there needs to be some kind of accommodation, whether the government will change the processes that it's using for enforcement actions, or whether it will appeal this to a higher court.
All right, Gerard Filitti, thank you so much for taking the time to join us, as always, and helping to break it down. Obviously, we're all going to be paying very close attention to see how this plays out and the implications that follow. Anything else we missed? Anything you want to add before I let you go?
Well, I think that this just showcases that a lot of the issues that we have with ICE are whether process is followed. And we're seeing that whether it is in the allegations of wrongful death, of shooting of Preddy or of Good, or whether in the acts of detaining people themselves, the core issue comes back to process, whether the ICE agents, whether the government is following the correct legal process. So that's something, regardless of where you stand on the issue, the process issue is a core one that courts will and should examine.
All right, Gerard, thank you so much for being here with us. We definitely appreciate it as always.
Thank you so much.